So I want to first thank Londi and Chris for making this amazing, amazing film. So you all have gift bags on your table from Black Health Matters and content from Zero. And as Chris mentioned, we have a Black Men's Prostate Cancer Initiative, and that initiative is to raise awareness in the Black community about prostate cancer and the substantial disparities that we experience. So now we're gonna have a conversation with our filmmakers and with prostate cancer survivors. So I'd like to call to the stage Londi Maduro and Chris Edwards, the filmmakers of The Silent Killer, Jeff Fortson, an Atlanta native, radio host and prostate cancer survivor and advocate, Don Williamson, a veteran, a prostate cancer survivor, and longtime prostate cancer advocate in the Atlanta community in the state of Georgia, and Dr. Michael Kemper, an experienced researcher who focuses on lifestyle urology at Georgia Urology. So for everyone, your mics are turned off, so when you begin speaking, you'll have to turn your microphone on. And so it's the first little button there, so just push it up when I ask you a question. So we often hear that we as Black men don't like to talk about our health, we don't like to go to the doctor, but we saw a lot of Black men talking about their health in this film. And as part of the Black Men's Prostate Cancer Initiative, we have a virtual support group where men talk about their health. We're gonna start an in-person support group here in Atlanta. So what were some of the challenges other than getting Black men to talk about their health? There didn't seem to be a problem with that here. So what were some challenges in creating this amazing film, Londi and Chris?
Some challenges. I think, one, we were very fortunate, you're absolutely right, we were very fortunate that we were able to get some men to talk, but not everyone was as willing to talk. It took a while for them to warm up, and I think that's really what it is. It's like, it's not so much an unwillingness, it's getting the conversation started. Once we got it started, they didn't stop talking. But definitely I would say that was the first part, just getting them warmed up, getting them comfortable, and Rico was great at that. Like, Rico has no problem asking uncomfortable questions or putting himself in the spotlight, and that helped. That helped them to be able to open up and to want to kind of share their stories.
I think when we finally found someone to interview, at that point, that's when the documentary really opened up for us, meaning that these guys wanted to share their story to get it out into the community. So I think that was, once they did open up, like Londi said,
Yep.
It really helped.
Yeah. So it seems like what's important is you create the context, create the environment, create the relationship, you know, and someone to trust, someone that they trust, that trustworthy sort of interaction where people feel more comfortable, you know, opening up. So for Dr. Kemper, what are some barriers and challenges that you've heard from men as they sort of navigate their prostate cancer journey and, you know, get screened for prostate cancer?
So a lot of it is getting people into the office and getting people, you know, to that first test, that first PSA. A lot of men, the video's completely right, don't want to get a rectal exam, don't want to go through that process. And then once you do have somebody who's got an elevated PSA on multiple checks, and we know they have to get to the biopsy, then you have to explain the biopsy, and you have to convince someone that that is important. And I can think of a few people that have 100% needed biopsies that just was, I think we're moving too fast, and so, well, it's something that happens. You know, you have to tell people that's what they need. And then once you have a diagnosis of prostate cancer, then it's going through that treatment journey, and it's figuring out what's the right option, and it's explaining that active surveillance doesn't mean watchful waiting. It doesn't mean you can just go out and not have to worry about it, and if you eat right, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah. You have to watch it. You have to be treating it and following up on it, and then people will do well, and people will do well with surgery, but the answer doesn't end once you're cured, because there's still prostate cancer survivorship. There's restoring functions that are lost during prostate cancer and treatment for that. And so it's a whole process where there's barriers at every entry of saying this is what's going to happen, but that doesn't mean that we can't fix it and that we can't address it and that we can't make this all right again.
Yeah. Well, so as a researcher, I felt like we were really great at talking to each other. And I feel like doctors are great at talking to each other. But we may not be as great at talking to folks who didn't spend years and years and years and years in graduate school. So what are some tools that you use to adequately communicate to the patients to make sure that they really understand what the prostate cancer journey might be?
Use nomograms. I like to use, you can take, Memorial Sloan Kettering has a good one, but you can basically plug somebody's numbers with their exact stuff in, and they will come out on the other side. What is your risk of dying of prostate cancer in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, if we do a radical prostatectomy? You can use those same numbers, say, what is your risk of dying of prostate cancer if we do nothing, if we watch it? And you can show people what is the percentage, and you explain that in a very straightforward way. And you say, you have to bring it down because you can't say, oh, I'm using an algorithm. That's not an appropriate one. No, this is based on what we know about prostate cancer. If we were to remove your prostate, your odds of dying of prostate cancer are this. Your odds of never having to worry about prostate cancer again are this. You know, the odds of it being outside of in your lymph nodes or outside the prostate at this point, based on what we know, is this.
Yes, yeah. So I live in Los Angeles, and we had a town hall event trying to get people to get the COVID vaccine. And a member of the audience said something that I will never forget. He stood up and said, you doctors, you physicians, talk to us like we understand risk, like we understand all of these terms that you're using. Please talk to us like we don't know what any of these terms mean. I think that's one of the great things about this, about Zero, is that we have a lot of the resources that patients need to, in plain language, to help them and to help the physician, navigate the process of the cancer journey or the pre-cancer journey as folks are thinking about whether or not to get screened. So the next question I have are for Don and Jeff as prostate cancer survivors. What were some of the barriers that you both faced as you navigated your prostate cancer journey in terms of getting screened and then navigating your treatment journeys?
All right, Don deferred it to me, so I'll take it,
Okay,
and then I'll shift it over to him. Okay. So some of the barriers I faced as a prostate cancer survivor, actually this year will be my 10th year.
Oh, is your mic on?
Is my mic on?
Yep.
Is that on? Okay.
Yep.
All right. I got this crazy voice, so I'm used to not using the mic,
Yeah.
Dr. Reggie. So this is actually my 10th, actually December will be my 10th year. If you don't mind for a second, because I want to connect something to what the urologist said. So I was one of those gentlemen in my 30s who actually started experiencing prostate issues, not knowing many years later that it'll be prostate cancer that I would actually be walking down that road. And I can also remember my urologist telling me, hey, you need to have a biopsy. In my mind, biopsy meant cancer. This was in my mid-30s when I was told, he's like, you need to have a biopsy done. I said to myself, I'm not doing that. 5 years I played Russian roulette. I did go every year to get a free screening. The 5th year I went, that's when I realized, okay, they saw blood in my urine, and that's when I went back to my doctor, and then that's when everything just started progressing from there, and I found myself in this journey of being in this prostate cancer lane. And regardless of education, regardless of income, when you wipe all of that away, when you hear the words, just hear the C word, or cancer, it just flips your world around, and it did for me. So as far as some of the barriers I've faced during the process, I'm wearing this shirt today, and I'm not promoting Northside Hospital, but I guess I will talk about it just a little bit, this is one of the places in which I receive care from. Now, they've got a number of different locations here within the area. Also, I was connected with, at the time, healthcare practice. There's pros and cons with being within a healthcare group and also being outside of a group. Sometimes when you're within a group, you have select doctors in which they want you to work with. I was kind of inside and outside at the time because the urologist that I worked with was well respected within the Atlanta community, but my health care decided to cut ties with them and to start doing everything in-house. So during that time period, there were actually a few options that were given to me as far as what we could do to move forward with treatment. The option that was given to me, and I'm in the automotive lane, I felt as though I was dealing with a used car salesperson. I could say that because I'm in the automotive lane. And I didn't like it. Fortunately, I came across a brother who was about 49 at the time that I tracked down through a contact I reached out to at Ebony as I was doing some automotive things with. I didn't tell them at the time that I'd actually was in the process of going through a biopsy and was literally scared. I just asked, were there any articles out there that dealt with prostate cancer? As I mentioned to Dr. Reggie, and I mentioned to Chris in the back of the room, I wish I would have had this documentary that I just saw. That would have been very helpful. Everything that was out there was either guys that were much older than I was, which was at 65 range. I was 42 at the time in which I was diagnosed. So to see this documentary and for it to, and I'm sorry for talking so long, to see this documentary and it answered so many questions that I was able to connect with a young brother who was 49 at the time. And I got connected through my aunt. She connected me with this older white gentleman who was a part of the cancer connection, but I didn't feel comfortable talking to him. I needed somebody who looked like me. I needed somebody also who was in my age range and somebody who had also gone down this journey. This gentleman was 49. Come to find out, he had written for another article, and he's got a sports background, and he had shared his article. Ebony picked it up. I read about it. I reached out to him, tracked his blog down, told him what I was going through. This brother actually connected with me, became one of my guardian angels, and referred a book to me also that I should pick up by Dr. Walsh, who's one of the leaders within this industry. And it went through all the procedures. It was about maybe 400 or 500, 700 pages, went through all the procedures, went through literally everything that we talked about here, except it gave a cultural effect to, and it also broke it down to, as in your documentary, so that we could connect with, your documentary actually was a different connection, was a great connection for me. But this was somewhat a medical connection, it was the best that was out there. But my urologist at the time, and I'm not gonna mention the healthcare practice because they're popular in Atlanta, let's just say I didn't listen to them, and I went by what the gentleman who referred me to the book, he referred me to this book, and he told me what process he went through, gave me the pros and cons, and...
So Jeff, we want to make sure we get to Don
Okay,
now.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure he gave me the pros and cons,
Okay.
and I decided to go his route. So I guess that's what I want to say, is even if a lot of times we put our health in the hands of our doctors and urologists. Go with what they say, but also check with other sources before you move forward, because you may find yourself making some decisions that you otherwise would make. And as I've done along the way, where I've had to switch doctors and urologists and find ones that I was trusted with and also had a background of being able to do what they're capable of doing. Sorry about that.
Yep, no problem. So now, Don, do you want to share your story and share a little bit about
Sorry about that, Don.
sort of what some of the...
No,
barriers
that's
are?
okay. First of all, I want to start to tell you a little bit about my story. My father, he had prostate cancer for 15 to 20 years. In February 2018, he actually succumbed to prostate cancer. In March of 2018, 1 month later, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So that was a rough period in my life. I'm a veteran. There's prostate cancer on both sides of my family. On my mother's side, my uncles have died from prostate cancer, and my father have died from prostate cancer. I'll talk a little bit about one of the barriers. The only main barrier that I had, because I was pretty familiar with prostate cancer, because of the other family history in men's and my family. But it dealt with the health institution. So when I tried to get my treatment, once I had found out I had prostate cancer, there was this crazy rule in the state of Georgia where they can only see a certain percentage of people who live in Georgia. The health facility I went to was only like 12 miles away, but yet when I went to that health institution, they told me that I couldn't be seen there. And so that was my first battle I had as it relates to health facilities and the doctor that was in my care. Bear in mind, this is one of the best health institutions in the state of Georgia, but yet I couldn't get into that institution. And I think that was a barrier because after I did my research, I found out men who looked like me was not getting into that institution, and other men that didn't look like me were. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
Can I say one?
Yeah.
Because they brought up something that I think is a huge issue. And I think, a lot of times we go to doctors and we take what they say at face value. But we all know there are good doctors and there are not so good doctors. And my father said, that was my father, Thomas is my father, he said, if I can't connect with what the doctor is saying to me on all levels and we have a problem, then that's not the doctor for you. And I think a lot of times we leave too much in their hands and don't ask the right questions. And I understand, you hear cancer and you can't hear nothing but cancer. Like the rest is gone out of your head, right? That's why you need advocates to go with you. You need someone who cares about you to be by your side, to have a list, right? To educate yourself, even if you're Googling stuff and it's probably not the right information, at least you can go in armed with information to ask your doctor, to find organizations like Zero who will support you, who will help you and help you find the right doctors or help you ask those educated questions. It's so important because I have talked, from doing this documentary, I have become an advocate. I am on the Health Disparities Task Force, and I have
Equity Task Force.
Sorry,
Health
my bad.
Equity Task Force.
My bad. I forgot we changed the name. We changed the name.
Yeah.
But I've talked to people who said, I just got diagnosed with cancer, but with prostate cancer, but I don't know what stage I am, or they just said I have to have surgery. Then that's not the right doctor. If they won't answer any questions and you can't get those type of answers, I was like, then let's get you a second opinion. And I got him into the 360 program, and he got some support. His was a language barrier. He was a Mexican man whose English was limited, so they weren't taking the time to help him. And now he got the support he needed. So there are programs available, but I do think that's a major problem. Is like once we hear one thing, then that's it. And to your point, that may not be the right treatment for you. Do your research. Just don't go with, oh, you have prostate cancer, now you need surgery on Tuesday. No. You need to get some more information.
Yeah. Dr. Kemper?
Decision is never one visit. A treatment decision is, as soon as you tell somebody that they have cancer, the rest of the visit, they are not absorbing anything that you are saying to them.
Mm-hmm.
That whole visit is, I have cancer.
Yep.
And so you give people literature, you say, these are the things we need to do next. So, okay, you have a diagnosis of prostate cancer. We're going to get an MRI. I'm going to do some genetic tests on your prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to come back. I'm going to tell you everything I'm telling you right now again, and we're going to go over, and then we're going to make our decision. It's not one visit. It's multiple visits. And when you've made the decision, that doesn't mean it's the decision.
Yes.
Until we've done it, it's here's your research. You need to do your own research. You're going to walk out of here with your biopsy report. I'm going to write your PSA on it. You can look and you can find out. I'm telling you this is your thing. I'm telling you where I get that from, and you can go find that because it's not one time. It's multiple times.
Right. And for many of us, many of those words are the first time we've heard those words before. And so, again, organizations like ours provide you with a lot of educational resources to help you sort of unpack what all of those words mean. So I could sit here and have this conversation for the rest of the afternoon, but I want to make sure that if you have any questions for any of us here on the panel, that we give you an opportunity to ask those questions. If you have any questions for the filmmakers, if you have any questions for our prostate cancer advocates or survivors, and if you have any questions for our urologist on the panel, I'm a public health and healthcare delivery researcher and the Vice President of Health Equity at Zero, and also happy to answer any questions. So I want to make sure I give the audience an opportunity to ask questions. So are there any questions? Yep.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcinée Lynette. I know that we are reaching into a community that is maybe 40 and up. How are we planning to reach the younger community so that our men can educate their fathers and be support systems? And how can we emotionally support as women that talk to husbands and boyfriends about this, that we get pushback? How do we support them in this journey of getting tested first?
I think for me, my story just recently had some twists and turns. But I think for me, making sure that as my children grow up, I have two boys, I have a 9-year-old and an 18-year-old, educating them at an early stage in life is key. I just recently found out that I was adopted. I'm 50 years old. I just found out as of July that I was adopted. I grew up, my dad always said, that, you need to go get your prostate checked. And, and the reason why we did this was because, my dad had prostate cancer, my brother had prostate cancer, and my brother-in-law. So I was like, okay, so I need to get, my prostate checked on a regular basis. But knowing that now I'm adopted, it's like, okay, I got to go back and do some research on my biological father. Come to find out, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but he passed from prostate cancer. So now that's even the more I need to tell my children, go get your prostate checked. And it's just educating. And having a spouse that is very supportive of this documentary, as well as getting the word out and helping me and making sure that I go to my appointments. The pandemic kind of pushed me around as far as getting access to doctors. So I just recently had my PSA, and it was within normal limits. But all that is having a supportive spouse and educating your children at an early age. And don't be scared to educate your children. Even my daughter, she needs to know as well. So we have to educate, push, don't be scared about it.
Can I say one thing? I think you have to start getting this out way before 40. You have to use your colleges and universities. You even have to use anywhere where you have young people at to try to start educating. And you can educate based on their age, how much you want to tell them about it. And as they get older in high school, college, you can continue to develop that education. But I think you have to tell them at an early age. My son is 36, and so I already have told him start getting your prostate checked because it's on both sides of my family, my mother's side and my father's side. So he's really at risk of catching prostate cancer. So I think to your one question about how do we get the word out, as they used in the documentary, churches is probably one of the best places to do it. Some people don't like to, do other things in churches, as you know, politics, and sometimes you find that in health too, that they won't talk about as much in a church. But I think the church, like doing your men's months around Father's Day, is great opportunities to get that word out.
So I'm going to answer your second part of your question first as far as caregivers. So at Zero, we have a caregiver mentor program. And so that's one way to support the caregivers. And as a healthcare delivery researcher, oftentimes for the Black community, our go-to places, barbershops and churches. I've been bald for the last 20 years, so I haven't been to a barbershop in a long time. And I don't go to church, so I haven't been to a church in a really long time as well. So there are other avenues. I mean, those are probably where most of us are, but that's not where all of us are. And so I think it's going to be important that we also have those other, avenues to reach the Black community. And so one of the things that we are doing on the health equity team is partnering with historically Black colleges and universities. And so that's why we have a health equity director. So Chris is going to be leading that partnership to work with HBCUs to start the conversation much earlier. Because in the video we saw as they were asking questions about where is the prostate, many of us don't know. And so that's going to be part of our HBCU partnership, is starting the conversation so much earlier so that when we do get closer to 40, that we are prepared to have those conversations with our primary care doctors.
And I think that's so important also because when we started working on this documentary, like Chris said, he brought it to me because of his family history at the time, right? My dad wasn't diagnosed then. My dad got diagnosed 6 months into us working on this film. And then, of course, I flooded my dad with so much information. He was not comfortable that I knew more about his prostate than him. But he took that to his doctor. And that's how he was able to, not freak out and to say, okay, I'm stage 1. What does that mean? Then he'd call me, okay, what did you say such and such is? Okay, I'm going to go back and ask him that. It made such a difference that he had the information and that he had me as his daughter to be able to push him to ask certain things. I'd ask, okay, what did he say regarding this? Maybe we should do this. We could have the conversation. And I think a huge problem is specifically in the African-American community is that a lot of men don't know that that's part of their family history. They know granddaddy died from something, but they don't know what. And then you find out, oh, he had prostate cancer. Or there's so many, that's my cousin sitting over there. We just met for the first time today because we didn't know we were related. She found me on Facebook. We got a lot of stories like that, right? And so that's a huge issue. So the more we can start to educate ourselves and have these family discussions as a family, that's what I was proud of. My father was like, we're going to talk about this as a family. He was recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. We talked about it as a family, and we're dealing with it as a family, unrelated to his prostate cancer, but we're dealing with it as a family. And then we all were able to do the genetic testing, as you talked about, to find out what our risk factors are, because clearly cancer is an issue within our family. And it was such a blessing. So now we're ahead of the game. So I think that's a huge part of it as well.
Was there a question over here?
This is something that we've been doing in terms of educating our communities, working with a lot of the graduate chapters of the fraternities and sororities, the National Panhellenic. A number of them actually do, and I just finished texting 2 of the regional health chairs for Omega and Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I know, that's what you are. I understand.
She can.
I understand, my brother. So one of the things we can do is just bring it forth to them because they are in the community every day. And, we've instituted programs like Train the Trainer and that kind of thing. But this is something that by bringing it forth to these organizations who already have these initiatives like Omega, their health initiative is prostate cancer, 100 Black men, it's prostate cancer. And the like is how we get more of our younger people involved as well.
I was just glad to see your footage because they have the great men of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated in it. So, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is David Moffitt. I'm a prostate cancer survivor as well, and I'm a combat military veteran, and I appreciate the documentary. It was awesome. I wish there were more like it out there. I just have to be real. And a lot of times this is a surface conversation, right? It's a surface conversation. We're not really getting to the root of what the issues are. As men, we have to take some ownership as well. A lot of this is self-inflicted because we don't know our family history. We won't have those conversations. right? So I challenge you today is to know your family history. We're having this conversation because the diagnosis. Why at the diagnosis stage? Why are we not talking to our young boys about their health care? They go to physicals, they play football, they go fishing, they go hunting, they play basketball, those type of things are talked about. But if we're talking about our community, we never talk about our health. We'll talk about education, we'll talk about finances, but as men, we're not talking about our health, right? Let's talk about this really. It's not so much the diagnosis. Men don't want to talk about this disease because it has a sexual component to it, because of the stigma of getting an erection. I feel less of a man because I can't get an erection. Let's be honest with ourselves. We talk about corporate America, we talk about the entertainment industry, we talk about sports. There's no reason why the NFL, the NBA, especially during September, everybody's not blued out. It would start a conversation, right? There's no reason why. I coach youth sports, middle school sports, and we all know we're getting ready to roll into breast cancer awareness. Everything, you drive a brand new car off the lot, it's gonna have a pink license plate. But why couldn't you go to your local park and say, the month of September, we're gonna wear blue? The kids come home, why are we wearing blue wristbands? Why are we wearing? It's gonna start a conversation. Those conversations starts education, prevention. We're only gonna have a greater awareness if we have the real conversation. Men, we're taught to be the tough guy, to be this superhero. That's not how God created it to be. In this journey of mine, I was that guy. I was that combat veteran that wouldn't show you my weakness. I was that guy I felt value in my erection. We have to move and navigate differently. So my point to you is my greatest lesson I learned in this journey for men, our greatest strength is in our vulnerabilities. When we can show our true vulnerabilities, then we could have the support system from our wives, from our children, because we'll share. They'll see how they're best to support us. So until we can have the real conversation and talk about the real reasons why men don't talk, it's a moot point. So we all need to look in the mirror and say, hey, especially men, I do it at my job. Corporate America, stranger in the street, what's your PSA? I started a support group, 4 guys. I was diagnosed in 2019. My support group is 55 men. We meet in person every month at the height of the pandemic. Men know when you are BSing them. If you BSing, whether you're a physician, whether you're their boss, no disrespect intended, they're not gonna open up. I was that same person sitting in the doctor's office thinking, and was shown that doctors know everything. Why question? But through this journey, I'm my best self-advocate. And you were correct. If the doctor's not gonna do what I expect for him to do, I'm gonna go seek another one. I'm just not gonna go with if you're greater than this, less than this, in between the margins. My father had prostate cancer, my grandfather, my stepfather, all 3 black men influential in my life. Neither one of them talked to me about it. This is my journey. I will be an advocate. I will be a voice. I am my brother's keeper. And that's just my story. Thank you.
Reggie, can I add something for a second, Dr. Reggie? So for those of us who want to know, and we don't have access to take this documentary home as of yet, I'm pretty sure we'll have access at some point. Stuart Scott, for those who are connected with sports. So under the age of 50, he passed away. I'm not a sports guy, I'm a car guy. This is really great whether you love sports or whether you are a caretaker, if you want to know the journey of a young black man navigating cancer, which is as transparent as this documentary that we just saw, Stuart lays it out here. Never, anytime I go through anything related to connections with cancer, I refer back to this. This always pulls me through. It's the most transparent book connecting with African American men that women can connect with, caretakers connect with. If you want to understand the story and the navigation of a cancer person, this is it. One other thing I want to also mention, if you don't mind. So for those of you who have access to Sirius XM, I actually do a car show, so that's also another connection to connect brothers with cancer. It's airing tomorrow, channel 141. Actually, I've got Dr. Reggie Silly Tucker.
Tucker Seeley.
I was just so screwed up his name all week. I'm sorry about that. Dr. Tucker, Reggie Silly Tucker. Is that right? I'm still screwed up. Tucker, hold on, I'm gonna let you take it.
Reggie Tucker Seeley.
I am so sorry about that. So I've got him on the show, and also I have another young brother who's on the show, and it makes a lot of connections about family history. I talk a little bit about it tomorrow, so 4 p.m., channel 141, and we make that connection with cars, cancer, but we also delve into it from the standpoint of trying to reach men in different places, beyond panels like this, beyond churches, barbershops, just trying to connect with us in different places.
I'm gonna come around here because I'm like hiding behind here. So thanks for inviting me. So my name is Dr. Leanne Burnham. I've been working in prostate cancer health disparities scientific research for a decade because my dad was diagnosed when he was 50 and didn't have any symptoms, found out on accident in the emergency room actually. And so that sort of informed my career trajectory. And so while my lab here at Morehouse School of Medicine, so I'm a professor there, we look at genetic determinants, biological determinants, social determinants that lead to black men having higher rates of prostate cancer. One thing when I was in California for the past decade, because I've only been in Atlanta for a month, by the way, so I'm here to kind of learn the scene. But for the past decade in California, one thing we published was that 54% of black men, when they were going to their physicians were not even discussing prostate cancer testing with them. So that's a problem because then we drew blood of the men, brought it back to the lab, assessed it, and we saw that a third of them had elevated PSA. So they're sitting in the doctor's office with elevated PSA and then not even having a recommendation from the doctor to have that screening. So I know that that's a problem in California, and I'm just curious to know, in Atlanta, since I'm new here, what do you predict? How do you think these conversations look with physicians in the office, just so I know what the landscape is like here?
My physician, he's a young black guy, and so I came to Atlanta about 15 years ago after I retired from the military. The first thing he had me to do was do a PSA test. So my experience in the Atlanta area with my physician was great. I'm sure everyone's experience is different, but I think it's based on your decision of who you see. I mean, I think if you see someone that looks like you, that understand the disparities and what you're going through, you're more apt to have that person kind of do a whole health screening of you versus not mentioning anything. And even today, he still follow my health journey, even though I'm seeing oncologists and hematologists and all sorts of kind of doctors. He still stay actively involved of what those doctors are providing, what type of care they're providing for me.
Can I add this also? I'm not sure about that. Also, I think what the gentleman at the table made as far as this, we really need to get real about this. Now, how many of us really have healthcare providers or doctors? There's a large percentage of us, we don't have access to them, or we don't even connect with them. So there has to be another means of us being able to be grassroots, to be able to connect with them. How do we get the brothers that's on the street? How do we get the brothers that's in the barbershop who's not going to the doctors? So there's one thing for us to talk about, and I'm sitting up on this panel like everyone else is. There's one thing for us to talk about us having access to doctors, also being here in Atlanta. It's a little different because I've dealt with both African-American doctors and also doctors who didn't look like me. And one of my urologists was one of 10 female black urologists in the country. So that's who I worked with for a short time period. She left the practice, and now I've got a white urologist who's a part of your practice who I trust him with everything. I had another one who I felt like I was leading the process. So I guess in essence is that we've got to push this message to the streets, to the brother, through our family reunions, through just a number of different means, because not all of us have a urologist or even doctors that we trust, or even doctors. One of my doctors that I went to who was a little bit overweight, I wasn't comfortable with him talking to him about certain things because I'm asking him, hey, did you get your exam done, this and that? He's telling me, oh, I've been kind of busy. Well, how are you busy telling me what I need to be getting done and you're not even doing it yourself? Like you now, I have a young HBCU doctor, and he's fit and he motivates me, and whatever he tells me, I'm listening to him, being a few decades older. So, but we don't have access to, if we're outside of Atlanta.
Can I speak to that real quick? I know I'm not on the panel, but I have an idea. So anybody who's interested, come talk to me after this. So in LA, the past 2 years, we provided free PSA testing in the community, right? So we're at Taste of Soul, we're in Crenshaw, we're in Compton. So we screened 1,000 men in the past 2 years. And then we partner with federal health clinics to provide follow-up care for uninsured men or underinsured men. And it's a problem in California in terms of like undocumented people too who are scared to have testing done in the first place. And so me and my mentor, Dr. Rick Kittles, I don't know if any of you are aware of who he is, but we are interested in forming partnerships in community and doing car shows, going to barber shops, going to churches, festivals, Black History parades, anything like that. We have the infrastructure, we know how to do it, we just don't know people here yet. So anybody who's interested in something like that, let me know.
Which is why I reached out to you to invite you here today, and thank you so much for coming.
I just want to say one thing in line with what this brother said. He talked about kind of taking responsibility for your health. And she's absolutely right, because I live in California, and when we were working on this documentary and also touring with it, a lot of men were saying that to us. Like, my doctor's never even mentioned it to me, or he said I can wait till I was 50. It's been a huge issue because initially that's what the doctors were told, that they should start screening men at 50. And so we've been saying, okay, well, if your doctor's not offering it, then you need to ask your doctor for it. Now, most men are going to be like, hell no, I'm not asking him for a digital rectal exam. Why would I do that, right? So we've been really having these conversations of taking responsibility for your health. Even as women, my own personal situation, I was told, you don't need a mammogram, you're good. No, I'm not good, because I know that I run at risk to possibly have breast cancer. So if you're gonna tell me no, then I'm gonna go to a doctor who will give me a mammogram, because I'm gonna have them once a year. I don't care what you say, I'm having it. Because what's not gonna happen is 6 months later, oh, I'm so sorry to inform you, you now have breast cancer, right? I took that initiative for myself, and he's absolutely right. We need to start having these conversations. We need for men to, if you don't have a doctor who offers this test to you, who's not concerned about this yet, who says, oh, you know what, you'll probably can wait till you're 50, then you need to find a doctor who will give you that test, or you need to ask for it yourself if it's not being offered to you, to at least have a PSA if you're not willing to have a digital rectal exam. I think that's super important to at least get a baseline, so then you can make educated decisions on how to proceed.
So this will be our final question.
Good evening. So my name's Derek Davis. I just got diagnosed with prostate cancer at the age of 45 a couple of months ago, and I've had my surgery and I'm doing well, but I have a great doctor. So, first thing I want to say is thank you very much for the film. I do think it's very informative, and to take some words from him speaking to us the way we need to be spoken to, that really needs to be a brochure, so to speak, in every doctor's office to hand off to people so they're aware. The brochures that I see don't represent me. That documentary represents me, it speaks to me. And I really think it needs to be part of the brochure or digital brochure in all these doctors' offices, okay? First thing I did when I got diagnosed, I started talking to people, just like what you were saying. This should not have happened so late for me, to be honest, even though I was age 45. It should have been discovered earlier. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor now. So I've had lymphoma before. So appreciate it, but I didn't do anything special. So I appreciate the sentiment, but I didn't do anything special. I just fought it. I do have a medical question here for you all. I had got my PSA done from year over year from 2.7 to 5.7, and my doctor told me it's monitor and see. A previous cancer survivor, we're monitoring and seeing with a jump from 2.7 to 5.7. That's unacceptable. I had to fight for an MRI and a biopsy. It's unacceptable. But I also want to challenge and talk to the doctors and say, the standard of care has been too normalized for America as a one-size-fits-all population. I want to know if we can start talking about the discussion of, my PSA number originally was 2.7. That's in the normal range.
It's
That
high. So 2.7 for a man in his 40s is high.
Thank you very much, yeah.
So
Yes.
that's, if you look at the normal range test, it'll say it's high. It'll say it's normal, that 4 is high. But if you're in your 40s, 2.5 is
too high.
If you're in your 50s, 3.5 is too high, or
Right.
4 is too high. 4 is not normal anymore. 3.5 is normal.
So the problem that I
that's the
had-
important thing, is age-adjusted PSAs is really important.
The problem that I had is the practices that I went to normalized it and said it was normal. Prior year and prior years before that, I had different numbers. So I really want to thank the fact that you had the documentary. I want to talk about the fact that it is survivable, it's curable if caught early. The selfish comment really spoke to me, and it's like, guys, I mean, I walk up to guys now, and it's the most awkward thing. I'll be inside Costco and say, hey, you're a black male, I survived cancer. You been to the doctor? Oh, last point. These annual exams, just because you're selling, are you going to your annual exams? They're not knowing or understanding if PSA is a component of that annual exam. It's like, yeah, I'm going to my doctor. He said what I want to hear, and I got out. No, did you also have a PSA test? So I also talk to my friends and say, look, at the age of 40 and higher, if you're a black male, every single year, I say if you're even 36 or 38, get your pre-baseline number. Because if you jump in with a number at age 41 with a number, it may not have been your number before. So that's what I want to share.
Great. So, yep.
I mean, I don't have a good answer for it. Honestly, it's not appropriate. That's been, but there are normals for every range. I mean, the same thing if you look at normals for testosterone, the range is 200 to 800. But if you have a man who's in his 30s who's got a testosterone of 300, they may not feel very well. You know, and that stuff is that we have these also normal ranges have been adjusted based on certain populations. That's what that's been developed on. That doesn't necessarily reflect the population here. And it's all comers population. So if you look at, there's plenty of data on age-adjusted PSAs, but that's not something that necessarily gets pushed to a family practice doctor, unfortunately. And so it's something that is not necessarily as widely available as it should be, and that's a problem.
So we're definitely going to miss Dr. Burnham and Dr. Kittles in Los Angeles. So we encourage you in LA, wrap your arms around them and help them so that we can address the substantial disparities that we experience. And there's so much more work that's needed, obviously, with how we ended this conversation with the healthcare delivery system and the things that need to be changed so that they are trustworthy partners to us as we are navigating care, because obviously they have shown themselves not to be all the time. So let's give our panel another hand.